ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदादतं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः। Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Srimad, recorded by M. Mahendranath Gupta, a disciple and apostle of the Master. কলকাতায় শ্রী ঈশ্বরচন্দ্র বিদ্যাসাগরের সঙ্গে শ্রী রামকৃষ্ণের মিলন। Sri Ramakrishna's visit to Vidyasagar and his dialogue with him, which is a very important chapter in Ramakrishna Kathamrita. So I skip the first portion where M describes Vidyasagar's house, his location, etc. So I straight away go to Sri Ramakrishna's meeting with Vidyasagar. ঠাকুর গাড়ি হইতে অবতরণ করিলেন, মাস্টার পথ দেখাইয়া বাটির মধ্যে লইয়া যাইতেছেন। উঠানে ফুল গাছ, তাহার মধ্যে দিয়া আসিতে আসিতে ঠাকুর বালকের ন্যায় বোতামে হাত দিয়া মাস্টারকে জিজ্ঞাসা করিতেছেন, জামার বোতাম খোলা রয়েছে, এতে কিছু দোষ হবে না? So Ramakrishna got down from the horse carriage, and Master Mahasaya M, the record of the Gospel, is leading Sri Ramakrishna to Vidyasagar's house, and when he was going, there were plenty of flower pots everywhere, and Sri Ramakrishna is moving in the midst of all this slowly. And while going, like a child, Sri Ramakrishna is touching the bottom of the shirt. My shirt is not buttoned. Will it be of any objection? Will it look uncivilized? গায়ে একটি লং ক্লথের জামা, পরনে লাল পেড়ে কাপড়, তাহার আঁচলটি কাঁধে ফেলা। So he is wearing a long cloth shirt and a red bordered dhoti, and a part of the dhoti is on the shoulders like uttari or chadar. পায়ে varnish করা চটি জুতো। So he is wearing his footwear well polished. মাস্টার বলিলেন, আপনি ওর জন্য ভাববেন না, আপনার কিছুতেই দোষ হবে না, আপনার বোতাম দেওয়ার দরকার নাই। M told Sri Ramakrishna, no, there's no problem at all, there's no difficulty. You do not have to button your shirt. In your case, nothing is of any objection. Nobody will object to your not buttoning your shirt. In your case, nothing, no formality is required. বালককে বুঝাইলে যেমন নিশ্চিন্ত হয়, ঠাকুরে তেমনি নিশ্চিন্ত হইলেন. Just like a child, when he is assured of something, becomes completely calm and quiet, happy. Sri Ramakrishna also was immediately assured that in his case it is not necessary to go the so-called civilized way, buttoning a shirt and so on. সিঁড়ি দিয়া উঠিয়া একেবারে প্রথম কামরাটিতে উঠিবার পর ঠিক উত্তরের কামরাটিতে ঠাকুর ভক্তগণের সঙ্গে প্রবেশ করিতেছেন। বিদ্যাসাগর কামরায় উত্তর পার্শ্বে দক্ষিণাংশে হইয়া বসে আছেন। As soon as he climbed the stairs in the first floor, Vidyasagar is sitting in his room facing the south. সম্মুখে একটি চারকোনা লম্বা পালিশ করা টেবিল, There is a squarish table just in front, beautifully polished. টেবিলের পূর্ব ধারে একখানে পেছন থেকে হেলান দেওয়া বেঞ্চ. There is a bench at the back with a backrest, and just on the eastern side of the table, টেবিলে দক্ষিণ পার্শ্বে আর পশ্চিম পার্শ্বে কয়েকখানি চেয়ার. So on the southern side and the western side, a few chairs for people to sit. Vidyasagar দুই একটি বন্ধুর সহিত কথা কহিতেছিলেন. Vidyasagar was conversing with some of his friends. ঠাকুর প্রবেশ করিলের পর বিদ্যাসাগর দণ্ডায়মান হইয়া অভ্যর্থনা করিলেন. As soon as Ramakrishna entered the room, Vidyasagar stood up with great respect and greeted him with folded hands. ঠাকুর পশ্চিমাস্য টেবিলের পূর্ব পার্শ্বে দাঁড়াইয়া আছেন. Ramakrishna is standing facing the west, and the southern on the eastern side of the table. বাম হস্ত টেবিলের উপর, পশ্চাতে বেঞ্চখানি. So his left hand was placed on the table and the bench was just behind him. বিদ্যাসাগরকে পূর্ব পরিচিতের ন্যায় এক দৃষ্টে দেখিতেছেন, ওই ভাবে হাসিতেছেন. He is looking at Vidyasagar as if he is known to him for a very long time with great affection and care. One-pointedly he is looking at him, and in divine ecstatic mood he is laughing to himself. বিদ্যাসাগরের বয়স আন্দাজ 62-63. Vidyasagar is 62 or 63 years of age. ঠাকুর শ্রীরামকৃষ্ণ অপেক্ষা 16-17 বছর বড় হইবেন. He may be older than Ramakrishna by 16 or 17 years. পরনে খান কাপড়, পায়ে চটি জুতো, গায়ে এক হাত কাটা ফ্ল্যানেলের জামা. So carefully the M is describing every little detail. That is the beauty of the gospel. So he is wearing a dhoti and a footwear, and also a half sleeve shirt made of flannel. মাথার চতুর্পার্শ্ব উড়িষ্যাবাসীদের মতো কামানো. The four sides in the head, like the people in Orissa, is shaven head. At the center there is some hair. কথা কহিবার সময় দাঁতগুলি উজ্জ্বল দেখিতে পাওয়া যায়. দাঁতগুলি সমস্ত বাঁধানো. When he is talking to Ramakrishna and laughing, all the teeth are brightly seen. All of them are artificial denture. মাথাটি খুব বড়, উন্নত ললাট আর একটু খর্বাকৃতি. His head is quite big, that shows a lot of brain inside, and his forehead is very broad and slightly short in height. Brahman tai galai upavito, because he was a Brahman and therefore he had the upavita on the sacred thread on his shoulders. Vidyasagar অনেক গুণ. প্রথম বিদ্যানুরাগ. So he is enumerating the various qualities of Vidyasagar so beautifully. Such a character analysis is very, very rare. How he summarizes the essential characteristics of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. প্রথম বিদ্যানুরাগ. The first important characteristic of Vidyasagar is great devotion to cultivation of knowledge. একদিন মাস্টারের কাছে এই বলতে বলতে সত্যি সত্যি কেঁদেছিলেন. আমার তো খুব ইচ্ছা ছিল যে পড়াশোনা করি, কিন্তু কই হলো, সংসারের পরে আর কিছুই সময় পেলাম না. Once he expressed to my M with tears in his eyes. I had a great desire to study so much, but after entering this worldly life, I couldn't get much time. দ্বিতীয়, দয়া সর্বজীবে, বিদ্যাসাগরের দয়ার সাগর. Second important characteristic is his great compassion and mercy for all beings. Vidyasagar, literally meaning ocean of knowledge, is actually Dayar Sagar, ocean of compassion. বাছুরেরা মায়ের দুধ পায় না বলে দেখিয়া নিজে কয়েক বৎসর ধরিয়া দুধ খাওয়া বন্ধ করিয়াছিলেন. The milk from the cow is meant for the calves, the offsprings of the cow, and lest they should be deprived of their share, Vidyasagar stopped drinking milk for quite a few years. শেষে শরীর অতিশয় অসুস্থ হওয়াতে অনেক দিন পরে আবার ধরিয়াছিলেন. When he fell very ill because of perhaps lack of nutrition, then much later he started drinking milk. গাড়িতে চড়িতেন না, ঘোড়া নিজের কষ্ট বলিতে পারে না. He refused to get into a horse carriage because the horses there will not be able to openly talk about their difficulty, but they will all the time feel great difficulty if the carriage is attached to them. So he refused to enter into a horse carriage. একদিন দেখিলেন একটা দুটো কলেরা রোগে আক্রান্ত হইয়া রাস্তায় পড়িয়া আছে, কাছে ঝাঁকাটা পড়িয়া আছে. দেখিয়া নিজের কোলে করিয়া তাহাকে বাড়িতে আনলেন আর সেবা করিতে লাগিলেন. Once he saw a person inflicted with cholera and attacked by cholera, helplessly laying in the street, and he, Vidyasagar himself, carried him on his shoulders, brought him home, and nursed him back to health. Tritiyo. So these are the two. One is his great eagerness for cultivation of knowledge. Second is great compassion. Tritiyo, third one, Shadinata Priyata, the love of freedom, not compromising with truth. কর্তৃপক্ষের সঙ্গে একমত না হওয়াতে সংস্কৃত কলেজের প্রধান অধ্যক্ষের প্রিন্সিপালের কাজ ছাড়িয়া দিলেন. Since he could not see eye to eye with the people who were running the Sanskrit college at that time, established by the British, he was appointed principal because he could not see eye to eye with the people who were running the college at that time. For whatever reason, he refused to compromise and gave up his post. Pancham, Matrubhakti or Moner Ball. The fifth one is great devotion for his mother and tremendous mental strength. মা বলিয়াছেন, ঈশ্বর, তুমি যদি এই ভ্রাতার বিবাহে না আসো তাহলে আমার ভারী মন খারাপ হবে. তাই কলকাতা হইয়া হাঁটিয়া গেলেন. The mother said, "O Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, O Ishwar, if you do not attend a particular marriage, his brother's marriage, then I will feel extremely sad." Just to keep the word of his mother, just to please his mother, from Calcutta all the way he walked to the place of marriage. পথে দামোদর নদী, নৌকা নাই, সাঁতার দিয়া পার হইয়া গেলেন. সেই ভিজা কাপড়ে বিবাহ রাত্রি বীর সিংহর মার কাছে গিয়া উপস্থিত, বলিলেন, মা এসেছি. On the way he encountered the Damodar river, and the river was in spate. there was no boat available to cross the river. So he swam across the river and went to his place, Veer Singha, and fully wet clothes, he went to his mother and said, "Mother, I have come to keep your word." These are the 5 qualities of Vidyasagar. 1, cultivation of knowledge, passion for knowledge. 2, compassion. 3, independence of views, uncompromising attitude with the truths and higher values. 4, লোকাপেক্ষা করিতেন না, this we have left out. একটি শিক্ষককে ভালোবাসিতেন, তাহার কন্যার বিবাহের সময় নিজে আইবুড়ো ভাতের কাপড় বগলে করে এসে উপস্থিত. So he did not care for the views of the world. He was very fond of one particular teacher, and for the marriage of his daughter, he himself went and performed certain actions necessary for the marriage without caring what will people think, because he was the principal of that college. And the 5th is great devotion for the mother and tremendous mental strength. So this is the kind of person which Ramakrishna is going to meet now. ঠাকুর ভাবাবিষ্ট হইতেছেন ও কিয়ৎক্ষণ ভাবে দাঁড়াইয়া আছেন। ভাব সম্বরণ করিবার জন্য মধ্যে মধ্যে বলিতেছেন, জল খাবো। দেখিতে দেখিতে বাড়ির ছেলেরা ও আত্মীয় বন্ধুরা আসিয়া দাঁড়াইলেন। So Ramakrishna is again and again going into an ecstatic mood and looking at Vidyasagar with one pointed attention, and after restraining himself from going to Bhava Samadhi, in order to restrain, he is assuming certain innocent desires, and he said, "I will now drink water," so that the mind comes down, and slowly all the local people assembled there to see Sri Ramakrishna, have a darshan of Sri Ramakrishna, and all the people of the boys of that house, they all assembled. ঠাকুর ভাবাবিষ্ট হইয়া বেঞ্চের উপর বসিতেছেন। একটি 17-18 বছরের ছেলে সেই বেঞ্চে বসিয়া আছে, বিদ্যাসাগরের কাছে পড়াশোনার সাহায্য প্রার্থনা করিতে আসিয়াছে। ঠাকুর ভাবাবিষ্ট. So a boy, 17 or 18 years old, was sitting at the same bench. He had come to Vidyasagar to beg for some assistance to be able to complete his education. Because anybody having any kind of want will freely go to Vidyasagar and ask for assistance. That was very common those days. Thakur Bhavavishtu, Ramakrishna is in a very high ecstatic mood. Rishir Antardrishti, ছেলের অন্তরের ভাব সব বুঝিয়াছেন. Ramakrishna was in a very high spiritual mood, and he had the inner vision of a rishi or a seer. He could penetrate and see through the inner substance of that boy sitting by his side. একটু সরিয়া বসিলেন, ওর ভাবে বলিতেছেন. He moved away from that boy a little who was sitting by his side and said, "মা, এই ছেলের বড় সংসার আসক্তি, তোমার অবিদ্যার সংসার, এ অবিদ্যার ছেলে." Mother, this boy is terribly attached to this worldly life, and he is the avidya samsar. That means he is attached to this world of avidya. Avidya, Ramakrishna used to say, kamini kanchan, attached to lust and greed. A avidyar chele, this boy has samskaras which are unspiritual. যে ব্যক্তি ব্রহ্মবিদ্যার জন্য ব্যাকুল নয়, শুধু অর্থকরী বিদ্যা উপার্জন তাহার পক্ষে বিড়ম্বনা মাত্র, এই কথা কি ঠাকুর বলিতেছেন? Master Maharshi is now hinting. Perhaps the meaning of what Ramakrishna said could be that if a person is not truly serious about attaining Brahma Vidya, the superior spiritual knowledge, but only interested in acquiring worldly knowledge in order to get a job and then earn money, that kind of person is attached to the world, and only this will bring him sorrow. বিদ্যাসাগর ব্যস্ত হইয়া একজনকে জল আনিতে বলিলেন ও মাস্টারকে জিজ্ঞাসা করিতেছেন কিছু খাবার আনলে উনি খাবেন কি? Because Ramakrishna is saying, আমি জল খাবো, I will drink some water. Vidyasagar literally thought that is the Ramakrishna wants to drink water. He told Master Maharshi, will he eat something if I bring some sweets or some other eatables? And told somebody, quickly bring water. তিনি বলিলেন, আজ্ঞা আনুন না। বিদ্যাসাগর ব্যস্ত হইয়া ভিতরে দিয়া কতগুলি মিঠাই আনিলেন, বলিলেন এগুলো বর্ধমান থেকে এসেছে। So Vidyasagar, their Master Maharshi said, yeah, you may bring something. So he immediately went inside, bring some sweets and placed it before Ramakrishna and said, these things have been brought from Bardhaman, some sweets which are very famous in Bardhaman, a district in West Bengal. মাস্টারকে দিতে আনিলে পর বিদ্যাসাগর বললেন, ও ঘরের ছেলে, ওর জন্য আটকাচ্ছে না। So they offered it to Ramakrishna and also to M. Then Vidyasagar said, oh, he is our own boy. It doesn't really matter if he is not offered or not offered. ঠাকুর একটি ভক্ত ছেলের সঙ্গে বিদ্যাসাগরকে বলিতেছেন ভক্ত ছেলের কথা। So he is telling a story of a very devoted boy to Vidyasagar. সেই ছোকরাটি এখানে ঠাকুরের সম্মুখে বসেছিল। So that boy was sitting in front of Sri Ramakrishna. ঠাকুর বললেন, এই ছেলেটি বেশ সৎ, আর অন্তঃসার যেমন ফল্গু নদী, উপরে বালি, একটু খুঁড়লেই ভিতরে জল বইছে দেখা যায়। This boy is extremely honest and sincere, and inside is like Phalgu Nadi, a nadi which is not seen, which is flowing underneath the soil. So this kind of Phalgu Nadi, and soil is outside. If you just scratch a little and dig a little, the waters will come out. মিষ্টি মুখের পর ঠাকুর সাহাস্যে বিদ্যাসাগরের সঙ্গে কথা কইতেছেন। So after he just ate a little of the sweets brought to him, and now with smiling face, Sahasravadan, always he'll be smiling, Sahasya, joyfully, happily, with smiling face, is conversing with Vidyasagar. দেখিতে দেখিতে এক ঘর লোক হইয়াছে, কেহ উপবিষ্ট, কেহ দণ্ডাইয়া। So by this time, the entire room was filled with people curious to have darshan of Sri Ramakrishna. And Sri Ramakrishna says, আজ সাগরে এসে মিলিলাম, এতদিন খাল, বিল, হদ্দ, নদী দেখেছি, এবারে সাগর দেখছি। সকলের হাস্য। Because his name is Vidyasagar, he said, today I have reached the ocean. So long I have been only going to rivers and small rivulets and lakes and so on. Today I have come to the ocean. Everybody laughs. Vidyasagar sahasye, তবে নোনা জল খানিকটা নিয়ে যান, হাস্য। Then he said, oh, in that case you take some saltish water, because the sea water is saltish. Everybody laughs. See, look at how the conversation proceeds. Ramakrishna said, Vidyasagar immediately gave a beautiful, very witty repartee. Again, look at Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna, Nago, নুনজল কেন? তুমি তো অবিদ্যার সাগর নও, তুমি যে বিদ্যার সাগর। শকরের হাস্য। তুমি ক্ষীর সমুদ্র, শকরের হাস্য। Immediately he replies, this is called repartee. Retorting wittily, quickly. He said, no, how can you be saltish? You are not avidya sagar, you are vidya sagar. You are not ocean of ignorance, avidya. You are the ocean of knowledge. Everybody laughs. And he says, Kshira Samudra is the milk ocean on which Mahavishnu is supposed to be lying down. Vidyasagar couldn't proceed further. Ta bolte paren bote. Then he said, oh, well, you may say that. Vidyasagar চুপ করিয়া আছেন, চুপ করিয়া রইলেন, ঠাকুর কথা কইতেছেন. So Vidyasagar is just quietly sitting there, and now Ramakrishna is saying this. তোমার কর্ম সাত্বিক কর্ম, সত্ত্বগুণ থেকে দয়া হয়। দয়ার জন্য যে কর্ম করা যায় সে রাজসিক কর্ম বটে, কিন্তু এ রজোগুণ সত্ত্বের রজোগুণ, এতে দোষ নাই। These are all gems which we should pick up about karma. Like in the Bhagavad Gita, for example, these are great teachings of the avatar. Your work, all the works, activities that are engaged in, are all sattvic karma. All of you know that in the Sankhyan tradition, due to Kapila Muni, the tendencies of people have been divided into three: sattva, rajas, and tamas. Of which sattva is luminous, bright, and releases you. Rajas is restlessness and leads to kama krodha, lust and greed and anger. And tamas is sleepishness, indolence, lethargy, and so on. So Ramakrishna is telling Vidyasagar, the work and activities that you are engaged in, these are sattvic karma. They lead to liberation, they lead to purification of the mind, chitta shuddhi. Sattvagun theke daya hoy. Daya arises from sattva-guna. So Ramakrishna used to distinguish between Maya and Daya. Unson kisankin, my wife, my children, my relatives. This is Maya. Attachment to one's own kith and kin. Daya is the universal compassion for everybody. From Sattva-guna comes Daya or compassion. Dayar জন্য যে কর্ম করা যায় সে রাজসিক কর্ম বটে, কিন্তু এই রজোগুণ সত্যের রজোগুণ, এতে দোষ নাই. This work which is done arising from daya, of course it may be rajasic karma, because all work presupposes rajas. Without any kind of rajas you cannot do karma. But Ramakrishna says here, but this rajas, a rajogun, sattver rajogun, this rajoguna is established in sattva, and therefore there is no defect, there is no harm in performing this kind of activity which may be arising from rajoguna, is established and based upon sattva. শুকদেবাদি লোকশিক্ষার জন্য দয়া রেখেছিলেন, ঈশ্বরের সেই শিক্ষা দেওয়ার জন্য. People like Shukadeva retained compassion or daya for the sake of instructing the world, lokasiksha, for the sake of giving teachings to the world, ঈশ্বর সেই শিক্ষা দেওয়ার জন্য, for educating the world, instructing the world about the mystery of God, Spirit and so on, the spiritual teachings they wanted to give, and therefore the daya, the compassion of people like Shukadeva was of a very, very high order in order to teach the people about spirituality, about godly life. তুমি বিদ্যাদান অন্নদান করছো, এও ভালো। You are performing vidyadana and annadana. Annadana is material objects, food, clothing, books, scholarships, money. These are gifts of these are given to people who deserve and who desire and who are in need of them. Annadana. Vidyadana, gift of learning, gift of knowledge. So you are doing annadana and vidyadana. Oh, this is excellent. Nishkam korte parli ete Bhagavan labh hai. Secret of Karma Yoga. If you can do this kind of activity without any desire for the results of this action, through this you can achieve realization of God. Exactly what the Gita teaches. Through that you may attain to higher and higher heights of spirituality. কেউ করেন নামের জন্য, পুণ্যের জন্য, তাদের কোনো নিষ্কাম নয়। আর সিদ্ধ তো তুমি আছোই। So some people perform these activities for the sake of name and fame. Their name should be propagated everywhere for the sake of attaining merits. Their activity, their karma is not without desire. It is sakama, full of desire. Ar siddha to tumi achoi, and you are already siddha. Ramakrishna was a master of pun and words. He takes a word and makes pun on them. Siddha means a person who has attained siddhi, success in spiritual life, in higher life. It also means a person is well boiled. In Bengali we say alu shuddho, pepe shuddho. You take a potato and boil it well, it becomes alu shuddho. You take a papaya and then boil it well, it becomes pepe siddho. Korla siddho. You take a bitter gourd and boil it well, it becomes korla siddho. Siddho means that which is well boiled. So Ramakrishna is making a pun on the word siddha. You are already siddha. Vidyasagar couldn't quite catch this pun, perhaps. Although he is such a great scholar, Ramakrishna, compared to him, is supposed to be absolutely unlettered. But look at the genius of Ramakrishna and the wit and the pun and the acute understanding, sharp insight. Vidyasagar, Maharshi কেমন করে? With this slight surprise says, how do you say this? শ্রীরামকৃষ্ণ সাহাস্যে, আলু পটল সিদ্ধ হলে তো নরম হয়, তা তুমি তো খুব নরম, তোমার এত দয়া। হাস্য। When alu potal is a kind of vegetable common in Bengal, alu is potato. When these are well boiled, siddha, then they become very soft. And you are so soft because of great compassion in your heart. Everybody laughs, enjoying the pun and the word siddha. Vidyasagar সাহাস্যে, কলাটা বাটা সিদ্ধ তো শক্তই হয়, সকলের হাস্য। He is also কলাই বাটা, a kind of a lentil, which when you boil it, it becomes it becomes harder. It's a very peculiar phenomenon. It doesn't get soft anymore, it becomes harder. So he is saying, but this kolai bata this peculiar lentil, kolai dal, the more and more it is boiled, it becomes harder. So call it harsh. Everybody laughs. Ramakrishna, তুমি তা নও গো, শুধু পণ্ডিতগুলো দরকচা পড়া। না এদিকে না ওই দিকে, না এদিক না ওই দিক। No, 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 you are not so. Mere scholars who have studied the books without any compassion and the softness of heart and feeling for others, they are neither here nor there. সকলে খুব উঁচুতে ওঠে, তার নজর কিন্তু ভাগাড়ে। যখনই vulture flies so high in the sky, I don't know whether you've seen, it's just like a dot, it moves around like this, but constantly looking at the carrion below and the dead bodies, corpses and so on, immediately it will pounce and take it away. So, all these pundits are flying so high, talking about great scholarly things, discussing things of very great scholarship, but their sight is always on worldly things. যারা শুধু পণ্ডিত, শুনতেই বেশ পণ্ডিত, কিন্তু তাদের কামিনী কাঞ্চনে আসক্তি শকুনির মতন পচা মরা খুঁজছে। Those were mere scholars, not all scholars, those are mere scholars. They have cultivated the intellect, not the heart. They have not cultivated purity of character. They are like vultures flying so high in the sky, but constantly having their gaze at the dead bodies, the corpses below. Pocha mora, the corpses which have got disintegrated, they are very tasty for these vultures. What is that? Kamini kanchane najor. Ashakti, attachment to woman and gold, attachment to lust and greed. Ashakti avidyar samsare, daya, bhakti, vairagya, vidyar aishwarya. This is an important line. He summarizes the whole thing. Ashakti, attachment to enjoyment of the senses, worldly objects, what Ramakrishna calls kamini kanchana, lust and greed, attachment to these things are avidyar samsar. They are of the nature of ignorance, the worldliness. Daya, bhakti, vairagya. Daya, compassion. Bhakti, devotion to God, divine love. And vairagya, dispassion for the world, unattachment, detachment from worldly objects. These are vidya aishwarya. These are the great wealth of vidya or knowledge. বিদ্যাসাগর চুপ করিয়া শুনিতেছেন, সকলেই এক দৃষ্টে এই আনন্দময় পুরুষকে দর্শন ও তাহার কথামৃত পান করিতেছেন। Vidyasagar is listening quietly to this conversation by Sri Ramakrishna, and all the people in the room are delightfully watching Sri Ramakrishna, man full of joy, the Anandamaya Purusha. M describes Ramakrishna very often by this phrase, Anandamaya Purusha, a person who is full of joy, immersed in joy. All of them are intently looking at Sri Ramakrishna and drinking deep of the nectar of the conversation, spiritual words which are escaping from his divine lips. Every word is so valuable, so sweet and so elevating. বিদ্যাসাগর মহাপণ্ডিত যখন সংস্কৃত কলেজে পড়িতেন তখন নিজের শ্রেণীর সর্বোৎকৃষ্ট ছাত্র ছিলেন. Vidyasagar was a very, very great scholar. When he was studying in Sanskrit college in Calcutta, he always stood first in his class. He was a topper. প্রতি পরীক্ষায় প্রথম হইতেন, স্বর্ণ পদকারী বা ছাত্রবৃত্তি পাইতেন. He used to be the topper of each class. He received gold medal for topping the class, and or he used to get fellowship, special scholarship for topping. क्रमे संस्कृत कॉलेज प्रधान अध्यापक হইয়াছিলেন. By and by, after he passed out and became slightly senior, he was appointed the principal of the Sanskrit college. তিনি সংস্কৃত ব্যাকরণ, সংস্কৃত কাব্যে বিশেষ পারদর্শিতা লাভ করিয়াছিলেন. He attained special competence in Sanskrit grammar and in Sanskrit literature. Even now, there is a Vyakarana Kaumudi. Kaumudi is like a moonlight, so soothing and cooling. Vyakarana Sanskrit usually is a big threat for beginners. Any grammar is that, and particularly Sanskrit grammar. People are terribly afraid of Sanskrit grammar. He wrote a book called Vyakarana Kaumudi, the soothing moonlight of the Vyakarana, of the grammar. That's what it literally means. Even now is being studied in Bengal, one of the most outstanding books for the beginners. If you can master the Vyakarana Kaumudi from beginning to end, then you would have gained great mastery over Sanskrit, written in very simple language in a most practical fashion. So he was a great scholar of Sanskrit grammar, Sanskrit literature. অধ্যবসায় গুণে নিজে চেষ্টা করিয়া ইংরেজি শিখিয়াছিলেন. Tremendous perseverance he had, and with his own perseverance and tremendous efforts, he also studied and learned English well. ধর্ম বিষয়ে বিদ্যাসাগরের কাহাকে শিক্ষা দিতেন না. In spiritual matters, Vidyasagar were very reticent to teach people about spiritual truths. He was very hesitant, reticent. He refused to teach people spirituality. তিনি দর্শনাদি গ্রন্থ পড়িয়াছিলেন. মাস্টার একদিন জিজ্ঞাসা করিয়াছিলেন, আপনার হিন্দু দর্শন কি রূপ লাগে? He also had studied philosophy, and once M asked Vidyasagar, because he was very free with Vidyasagar, he was working in Vidyasagar school, he said, how do you find the Hindu darshan, the philosophy of the Hindus? What is your attitude towards? How do you like it? And what is your reaction to this after studying the Hindu darshana? তিনি বলিয়াছিলেন, আমার তো বোধ হয় ওরা যা বুঝাতে গেছে বুঝাতে পারে নাই. Vidyasagar said, I think they could not quite explain or expound what they wanted to explain or expound. হিন্দুদের ন্যায় শ্রাদ্ধাদি ধর্মকর্ম সমস্ত করিতেন, গলায় উপবীত ধারণ করিতেন, বাংলায় যে সকল পত্র লিখিতেন তাহাতে শ্রী শ্রী হরিশরণম ভগবানের এই বন্দনা আগে করিতেন. But like any pious devoted Hindu, he did all the various rituals like Shraddha for the sake of the Pitris, for the sake of the deceased ancestors. And he always wore the sacred thread on his shoulders. And whenever he wrote a letter in Bengali, he always used to begin Sri Sri Hari Sharanam, Sri Sri Hari, Vishnu, Narayana, the Supreme Lord, is my refuge. So he always used to invoke the blessings of the Lord before he started writing any letter. মাস্টার আরেক দিন তাহার মুখে শুনিয়াছিলেন তিনি ঈশ্বর সম্বন্ধে কিরূপ ভাবেন। M once asked him, "What is your conception of God?" বিদ্যাসাগর বিদ্যাসাগর বলিয়াছিলেন, তাহাকে তো জানবার জো নেই, এখন কর্তব্য কি? A human mind cannot grasp the infinitude of God, mind being finite and God being infinite. It is impossible for the finite human mind to grasp the infinitude of God. আমার মতে এখন কর্তব্য কি? Then what is to be done? What is our duty? আমার মতে কর্তব্য আমাদের নিজের এরূপ হওয়া উচিত যে সকলে যদি সেরূপ হয় পৃথিবী স্বর্গ হয়ে পড়ে। So his conception of realization of God. So what is to be done? The finite human mind will not be able to realize the infinitude of God, the majesty, the vastness of God. So what is to be done? What is our duty? Our duty is to become and to transform our character in such a way that if everybody in this universe transforms his or her character in the same fashion, the entire world will be turned into heaven tomorrow. স্বর্গ হয়ে যায়। প্রত্যেকের চেষ্টা করা উচিত যাতে জগতের মঙ্গল হয়। So this is Vidyasagar's statement that every person in this universe, man, woman, child, everybody has to strive for the good of the world, for the auspiciousness of the world, Mangal kora uchit, for the welfare of this world. As Buddha said famously, be good and do good. This is the whole of religion. Vidyar avidyar katha koite koite Thakur Brahmagyaner katha koitechen. So after discussing Vidya and Avidya, Sri Ramakrishna is now discussing Brahmagyana, the knowledge of the Supreme Brahman, Supreme Being. বিদ্যাসাগর মহাপণ্ডিত ষড়দর্শন পাঠ করিয়া দেখিয়াছেন, বুঝি ঈশ্বর বিষয়ে কিছুতেই জানা যায় না। Vidyasagar was an extraordinarily great scholar. After thoroughly studying the 6 orthodox traditional philosophies of India, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, one group, Sankhya, Yoga, the second group, Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa, Vedanta, the third group. These are the 6 Indian philosophies, traditions, Shad Darshana, Astika Darshana. Nastika Darshana are 3 in number, the Charvaka, Buddhist, Bauddha Darshana and Jaina Darshana. 6 traditional Indian philosophies, Shad Darshana. After studying all of them, Vidyasagar realized that one cannot say anything about Ishvara or God, and Ishvara cannot be known, understood or realized by the finite mind, God being infinite. Sri Ramakrishna, Brahma Vidya Avidyar Pare, তিনি মায়াতীত। ব্রহ্ম বিদ্যা ও অবিদ্যার পার, তিনি মায়াতীত। Very pithy statement. Brahman is beyond Maya. Ishvara or Brahman, it can be Saguna Brahman or Nirguna Brahman. Saguna Brahman is called Ishvara. So Brahman is beyond Maya. He is called Maya Adhisha. He is the ruler of Maya. All of us jivas, finite, limited jivas, all of us are Maya Adhina. We are under the spell, under the sway of Maya, whereas Brahman is Maya Adhisha. He is the supreme ruler of Maya. Maya Atita, he is transcendent, he is beyond Maya. What is Maya? Maya is space, time and causation. It is Desha, Kala, Nimitta, which is what you call the samsara or the world. Anything which is confined within the limits of space, time and causation, Desha, Kala, Nimitta, is finite and therefore changing and therefore perishable and therefore cannot be the supreme reality which is undecaying, imperishable, constant, unchanging. এই জগতে বিদ্যামায়া অবিদ্যামায়া দুই আছে. This is a unique contribution of Sri Ramakrishna. Don't think all Maya is bad. There are two varieties of Maya, two kinds of Maya. Vidya Maya, the Maya of knowledge. Avidya Maya, the knowledge of ignorance or attachment. জ্ঞান ভক্তি আছে, আবার কামিনী কাঞ্চনও আছে, সদ আছে, অসদ আছে. You have jnana and bhakti, knowledge of God and devotion to God, divine love on the one side. On the other side you have attachment to kamini kanchana, lust and greed. সদ আছে, অসদ আছে. There is a being and non-being. ভালো আছে আবার মন্দও আছে. There's good as well as bad. Kintu Brahman nirlipto. But Brahman is unattached like Akasha. ভালো-মন্দ জীবের পক্ষে, সদ অসদ জীবের পক্ষে তার ওতে কিছু হয় না. Good and bad are all for the sake for the jiva. Because the jiva is within Maya, Maya is considered Dvaita, two, the dual, bhalo, mando, good and bad, shita, ushna, heat and cold, sukha, dukkha, happiness and sorrow. These are called dvandva, the duality. Within Maya you have the duality, and we go beyond Maya, you go dvandvatita. The Bhagavad Gita, repeatedly the Bhagavan teaches Arjuna, become dvandvatita, nirdvando, nitya sattvasto, yoga kshema, atmavan, nirdvandva. Go beyond the dvandva, go beyond the duality. As long as within Maya, this dual throng, this duality will never cease. যেমন প্রদীপের সম্মুখে কেউ বা ভাগবত পড়ছে, কেউ বা জাল করছে. প্রদীপ নির্লিপ্ত. There is a light and somebody is reading under the light of Bhagavatam, a spiritual scripture describing the divine play, Leela of the various avatars, incarnations of God, of which Sri Krishna Avatara is the most famous in the Bhagavatam. Somebody is reading a spiritual book and somebody is forging a document, cheating dishonestly, but the light itself, the Pradipa, under which both of these actions are taking place, it is completely unattached. It has no connection with the activities taking place under it. সূর্য শিষ্টের উপরে আলো দিচ্ছে, আবার দুষ্টের উপরে আলো দিচ্ছে. Surya, the sun, is shining at good people. It's also shining on wicked people. Suryo yatha sarvalokasya chakshu nalipyate chakshushayir bhakyadoshaihi ekastada sarvabhutantaratma nalipyate lokadukkhena bhakyaha. Kathopanishad. Just like the Surya is not affected by the defect in the eye of the seer. Somebody has a defect in the eye, is looking at the eye, Surya. In what way the Surya is affected by that? Just like the Surya, the sun is unaffected by anything. The onlooker's defect in the eye is also shining at the good, shining at the wicked, and sun itself is completely detached, unaffected by any of the defects in the samsara or the dual throng or the worldly objects. যদি বলো দুঃখ পাপ অশান্তি এই সকল তবে কি, তার উত্তরে এই যে ওসব জীবের পক্ষে ব্রহ্ম নির্লিপ্ত. Suppose you ask the question, but we see dukkha, sorrow, pap, sin, ashanti, lack of peace, all that is commonly seen in the samsara in the worldly life. How do these things come about? Then the answer is, all these are for the jiva or the embodied being. With respect to an embodied being, with respect to a jiva, with respect to a person who is under the sway of Maya, under the sway of space-time causation, all these things happen. But Brahman itself is completely detached. সাপের ভিতর বিষ আছে, অনেকে কামড়ালে মরে যায়, অন্যকে কামড়ালে মরে যায়, সাপের কিন্তু কিছুই হয় না. This is another very interesting example he gives. A snake has poison in its mouth, in the fangs. If it bites somebody, immediately the person dies. But the snake itself is not affected by its own poison because it's its own dharma. It's a very important scientific and philosophical principle. Nobody is affected by his own dharma, by his own characteristic. This is the principle of what we call the vaccine. A virus has affected you. What is the vaccine? You take the virus and inject it in the body so that the virus becomes part of the body itself, and therefore virus externally will not be able to affect it. Which means no object is affected by its own characteristic of dharma. Fire burns everything, but fire doesn't burn itself. Because the burning property of fire is fire's own dharma, own characteristic, and for the burning property of fire cannot burn fire itself. Only when something is external to you, you are affected by it. This is a philosophical and scientific principle by which you are forced to the conclusion that you should absorb the external world completely within yourself. In that case, you will not be affected by the external world. Just like a fire cannot burn itself, Maya cannot affect you, provided that you take refuge in the Mayadhisha who is Brahman, and you are protected from the effects of Maya. You go beyond the Jivatva, individuality, become universal, and therefore you become one with the infinite. Maya cannot touch you. Brahma je ki mukhe bola jai na. Then another context he brings about, which is very, very interesting, oft quoted. We'll take it up. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampadhuta Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.